We have Alex Ouziel. He is a polyglot who speaks 6 different languages. You are currently the owner of Novodonte Vermouth. You are ex-CEO of Bacardi Russia.
Well, I was general manager for Eastern Europe.
So half of Germany. You have run the Tour de Jean. Can you clarify exactly what that is?
340 kilometers. Now put some mountains in the middle. You get 6 days in total to do it, and the clock never stops.
340 kilometers in 6 days.
It's almost like being a bartender.
Yeah, all right, calm down. Calm down. We do 340 kilometers to the ice room and back.
And little sleep.
And lots of alcohol.
Yes.
You've also done things like you went to Russia just after the Soviet Union collapsed, and you were like in charge of Spanish wine. You were infamous for the campaign of chicken stock for a while.
Yeah, if you're Russian or Ukrainian or from Kazakhstan or maybe Romania, you might remember a certain bulbul.
We tend to travel and we speak to bartenders all over the world, and we tend to just speak about the brand. But I think there's a lot more to it, the person behind it. I think a lot of the people that watch this stuff are going to enjoy this, because at the end of the day, I think that bartenders or brand ambassadors or brand managers even, we normally have a pretty closed circuit of people that we talk to. We don't go beyond a certain level. I very much doubt many of us have had an opportunity to speak to somebody of a CEO-ish, director-ish level as long as I have with you, right? And I think there's definitely a difference between being a director of even a country like Germany, France, or the UK, and being in charge of more than 12 different markets, like the Eastern Bloc, for example, Bacardi. Today, you're going to shed light on the truth behind the bullshit.
That's a big responsibility. Am I the first person from not the bar industry in the show?
Yes.
Wow,
I would say
that's a huge responsibility.
So that's the first question. Well, firstly, pour some vermouth. How do you? Old school.
There we go.
You say you're not from the bar industry. So what industry would you consider yourself from?
Spirits industry or industry. We tend to think that, the people from the bar world and the people from the spirits world, or the drinks world, we tend to think that we're in the same industry, but I don't think we are. I think we have very different realities. We make a product which we craft or we make industrially, and we put it into a bottle, and we have to do distribution and marketing and get into the consumer. A consumer that very often is in your bar, and in your bar it's all about hospitality. I think that we have a point in common that is the consumer, and that's where we meet. We literally meet at the bar, but we are two very different industries with two realities, and particularly as I have been building Novodonte, and I spent a lot more time in bars than I did before, and a lot of them with you. Yeah. And I think it's very important, you almost have to be led by the hand to see things that you just don't see before.
In the spirits world, you have on-trade and off-trade. Mm-hmm. On-trade is everything to do with hospitality and venues that sell alcohol through cocktails or whatever. And off-trade is shops, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So we're a part of your chain. Would you say that, or how would you?
You are part of our value chain, and you are one of the markets that we serve.
You were a director of what? How many markets? 10, 12, or something like that?
When I was in Eastern Europe, it must have been, 20, and then when I was in Asia, Middle East and Africa, probably 80, I don't know.
Well, so here's the thing, right? So there's 24 hours in a day, you have a family, you have a kid, you have an office that you go to. I'm struggling to work with 4 brands and taking calls every week. You have 20 markets that you're in charge of. How does one do the thing? We see all these videos of CEOs who wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, do an ayahuasca ceremony, cold shower, cold plunge, workout, snort a line, go to work.
I think that the first thing is that one person does not do the thing. many people do the thing. If you are in many places, in many countries, if you're just alone, you're not going to be there very often. When you're a small company like we are with Novedante, that's kind of like a reality that you have to live with.
How much does the on-trade represent versus the off-trade?
It depends. I mean, when you look at markets, you tend to say that some markets are more on-trade and some markets are more off-trade.
Yeah.
So a market like Spain traditionally is being considered an on-trade market. So you would have probably back in the 90s about 80% of sales happening in bars.
Okay.
That has changed over the last 20 years as the price of going to bars has gone up. So more people are drinking out more at home, more botellones, and botellones are traditionally, I mean, the bottle for a botellón is usually bought in a shop, not in a bar. When you go to the northern countries, and traditionally countries that are more cold, they tend to have a much bigger off-trade presence. Okay, so in Russia, it would be considered that 80% of the market would be off-trade. And a lot of it would be vodka. And that's repeated in places like Sweden or in the northern countries.
There is a discussion in the bar industry that there is a bubble. Is the mixology bubble about to burst?
We've talked before about guest shifts, right? And I think guest shifts clearly a marketing tool, both for the alcohol companies and for the bars themselves, especially as bars gear up for 50 best and so on. You very often have said you either play the game or don't complain, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that. As a consumer or as not a bartender, I see the guest shifts as being a little bit the wrong way around. If I own the bar and I have my menu and I want my loyal consumers to try new things, I think that bringing over a guest shift is a very good way of having those people to try new things in my bar without feeling the need to go somewhere else and spend their money somewhere else. But my consumers come on different days of the week. So in a way, for me, the ideal guest shift would be something that lasts a week, that all of my that I can promote to my consumers and they can try them for a whole week. Now, that's very difficult because of the economies of that, you know. But I think there needs to be a way that the guest shifts becomes not only about the bartenders getting together, which I think is great. You have one of the best communities around, but I think it needs to involve the guests and the general consumer a lot more.
If you're a director of a company such as, let's just say Bacardi, 20% of your total sales is on trade. And that's not talking about the cocktail bars. That's all hospitality venues you invest in. And then you're investing disproportionately into guest shifts and events in a venue that can hold 20 people, but you've put in 5K, 6K, 10K to have this event that serves 60 people. From a business perspective, where's the ROI?
If you're a big company in the alcohol world, you are investing around 20% of your total annual revenues on marketing. That's a hell of a lot of money. A lot of that is going into buying space in a shelf, either in a bar or in a supermarket.
In the off-trade.
In the off-trade or in the on-trade. If you look at the statistics, they seem to say that you can spend those $9 billion a year, right? You top 6, 7 companies in the world. And then when a shopper is going to go into an alcohol store or a supermarket, 60% of them have not decided what they're going to buy until they reach the shelf. 60% of those 9 billion
It's fucked.
are wasted. And somebody who spent none of those billions, if they're in a good place in the shelf, they have the equal chance to the top 20 brands in the world.
So it's almost like psychological democracy. Bartenders seem to not have any more loyalty for brands anymore, right? As a result of, say, this kind of investment. Big brands could turn around and say, well, your Bombay Sapphire today, your Beefeater tomorrow, your Tanqueray the third day. Fuck off. I'm done. There's 2 ways to go about it. Either you go to a younger bartender that's not been bought yet and you buy them, or you stop investing.
A lot of things have changed between the alcohol and the bar world in the early 2000s right to now and the previous 20 years, the 80s and the 90s. If we go back to the 80s, the large alcohol companies did not have whole portfolios of drinks. Bacardi had Bacardi. Martini was a separate company and had Martini. And even the bigger ones did not have every single category, so they were not stepping on each other's toes. Today, everybody has everything from vermouth to tequila. Back in the 80s, premiumization was Johnny Walker Red, maybe black.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Today it's gone all the way to blue and George V and whoever, right? There's a lot more money being put into alcohol and a lot more money for promoting it. In the old days, in a bar, if somebody was paying you any money at all, you could have a contract for rum, and you could have a contract for vodka, and they could be with different companies, and you could choose your favorite one.
Sure.
Today, one of the big companies is coming and is saying, I want it all.
Yeah, well, that's exactly my point. So they want 60% of the contract.
They want 60% of the contract, and they want it in every single category. You like their tequila, and you like something else that they do, but you don't like all the three categories. You still have to have all those three categories, and you have to do volumes on them, otherwise you don't get paid the whole contract. When I was in Bacardi and in Eastern Europe, and I was spending a lot of time out of the Warsaw office, right? And I remember going into some of the early cocktail bars in Warsaw, probably talking 2011, 2012, we would pay quite a lot of money to have some kind of influence on the bar. And I remember going the first time and asking, why I'm not seeing all our brands in the back, right? And they say, well, Alex, you need to understand these special bartenders. This is a new trend in cocktails, and they like to study the history of the cocktail to find the drinks that are new for the bartenders, for the consumers, that can be kind of like discovery and so on. So you need to understand that we need to give them space, and then the ROI we're going to get through their collaboration outside of the bar and so on. I say, okay, that makes sense. I get that. Now, fast forward 13 years to today when I'm building my own brand. And I go, yes, great. I'm going to go to all of these bars and they're going to want all these special things. And all of a sudden, all you see is just a wall of brands that you can get in the local supermarket. Right? Something has shifted in the last 12 years, and part of it was the increasing level of budgets of the big guys. And then the pandemic has obviously taken a very heavy toll on the bar industry, and there was a need for money and for cash, and the big guys saw their opportunity and threw it in while they were selling a lot on the off trade.
The reason that the top, say, 4 or 5 are playing this game is not necessarily because of the bartenders. It's because the other ones are doing it.
Because of each other, yes.
So as much as we think that we can change the world, we're not really the driving factor of possibly the bartending boom. It's inter-competition between the largest alcohol companies in the world.
On the one side, you like that the big guys can come in and they can put money in your budget because it allows you to pay some higher salaries, but also to have nicer venues, right? But you hate that they walk into your bar as if it's their home. They think it's their home.
Oh, shit.
Because they feel they've paid for it. Listen, in the last 12 months, all the big guys have fired north of 1,000 people. Between 10 and 15% of their workforces. So,
why?
Because sales are down, particularly in the US. Sales went really high up post-pandemic, during the pandemic in the off-trade. Then after the pandemic, there was a supply chain crisis. All of the containers were in the wrong place of the world, and there were a lot of boats everywhere. So everybody was asking for a lot of product. That when it arrived, it created huge warehouses of product.
Surplus.
Right? A surplus, which is now being digested over the last 18 months. You look at the share prices. If you are going to your phones, look at the share price of Diageo, Pernod Ricard, Campari in the last 18 months, and you will see what they are saying. And they have to bring it back up. They need to make decisions, and they fire people. That's the other thing that has changed between the 80s and now. Right? In the old days, people would start in a job and maybe would go their whole careers through it, right? At some point, there was a social contract that was broken between companies and employees. If you feel that it's right for you to change your job because you can find a job that pays 30% more somewhere else, the company is going to feel that it's right for them to fire you when they cannot afford you. And we hear of all of these stories of World War II when companies were closed, but nobody was fired. And it was because the owners were making a hell of money, but they had also that social responsibility.
Yo, do you like cocktails in a pouch? Fuck those guys, sure suck. All right.
At some point 20 minutes ago, it made sense.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't remember.
I'll have to rewind.
Yes, please let me know.
Here's the thing. Did you ever encounter the brand ambassadors, the bartenders? Did you ever even give a shit about, besides coming in and drinking at the bar? Did you ever interact with the advocacy side of things when you were up there, up in the pearly gates?
No, absolutely, yes.
Well,
First of all, because they're the most fun people in the organization to talk to. When you're in a big company and you have global brand ambassadors for each of your global brands, the global brand ambassador comes to your market, if you're lucky, once a year. They spend all of your champagne budget. But yeah, you try to go and say hi, if only so that he tells other people in other countries how cool you are.
Okay. So again, the motivation is not, it's good for my job. It's I want to tell the GM of Bulgaria that I've got more money than he does.
But it's important the bar world has one of the strongest communities of any industry I've encountered. So when a bartender comes from another country to your country and you're a bartender, you want to come out and say hi and whatever, right? And not because Bacardi might be there and you might become their next brand ambassador. No, just because it's a fun night out. It is, you're meeting people who are doing this very similar thing to you in the other side of the world. Maybe you learn something new. How much of the training goes into people who are not behind the bar? In the old days, when you had 5 people in your bar, you have 25 minutes to make a drink because it's empty, right? It was literally one person behind the bar.
Yeah.
As you get into the 5-star hotel bars, cocktails getting into more and more places which are away from the bar. Why is the back bar so important when people see you in their menu? And why the people who you're interacting with are not equally trained to the level of the bartenders? And some of the best places that I have been to in the last 12 months have been the people that do that very well. That you're talking to somebody at your table, maybe 40 meters or 25 meters away from the bar, and you feel you're talking to the bartender. And they are relaying that, and they're bringing you a perfect drink.
I can 100% agree. I think that floor staff are completely underrated. I think that training in general and training programs are super underrated. But here's the thing, and this is going to be a throwback to this social contract you were speaking about between companies and staff, right? Never has in the bar industry there's been things like pensions. Nobody talks about health insurance is not a thing in the US. Right? We're lucky in Europe that most countries have some sort of national health service. If there's no support from the government and the company is not going to invest in you because you're of the high turnover rates, there's no pension. This whole social construct between companies and staff that you were speaking about that existed, they never existed in this world. And it's not even getting any easier for us.
And it made sense when it was a job that was mainly performed by students or people who who just were very young in their lives, right? And no one's thinking about the pension, right?
Well, when rents were lower, when the salaries were better.
But if you want people, like sometimes you have a career waiter who has done their job for a long time, they know a hell of a lot, right?
Amazing, the soft skills alone.
And the way they can manage the whole thing. But you cannot do that if you don't give people a wage that they can live on. The world needs more of a human touch. You were talking earlier about, is there a bubble? The problems with the bubbles is not when they affect the best. Okay, there's always the best bar, the best restaurant. They are busy during good times and during bad times. Because during bad times, the people who wouldn't get a reservation during the good times, they go, all right? The places that are not so good are the ones that tend to drive industries down. And what the bubble does, what all this money does, is that there's too much money, not only for the top places, but for the level below, and the level below, and the level below.
Right.
And that's creating a situation where the bar world is forgetting what it's like to survive by itself and what it knows how to do very well. There should be room for bars to have their craft corner. You know, like 20% of the bottles that we have in the back bar are going to be something that is not owned by the big multinational. 20% of the drinks that we use inside our cocktails. It should give you that space to use the products that really mean something and that make it different. I think
I agree. No,
there's nothing I hate more than walking into a VIP 5-star 25 euro dollar Negroni place, and it's made with Martini Rossi, Gordon's, and Campari. 3 bottles of all combined, you can almost buy for the same price that one cocktail there. That should be illegal. If the death penalty is there for something, it should be for this.
Death penalty for
Negroni, death by Negroni.
overpriced Negroni. That's a hat. I'm going to make a hat. Death by Negroni.
I can understand when it's said that a bar is not only the drink, it's the experience.
I agree.
But the drink is part of the experience.
What are the main differences you feel between being like a CEO of a big company and now working for your own small brand? What are the key difficulties or challenges or thoughts that came into your mind?
You know, when you're working in a big company that has been around for, let's say, 150 years, because a lot of them have been around for 150 years. What happened 150 years ago? We need to go back and check in history. But a lot of alcohol companies started around then. You come in and you go under that umbrella. Obviously, you're already coming with a big business. Anybody you talk to knows that you are going to make money for them. When you come with a little brand, and let's be face it, there's a lot of new brands these days. Many people walk into a bottle, into a bar and say, would you try it? You know, and I was one of them. And it's important to do it, but you need to choose the right time of day sometimes, maybe not during the service or the busiest time of the day. You see people, they try it out of politeness, and then when they like it, you kind of like also see it because they are surprised themselves.
So honesty, it's more honest.
I think it's more honest. I think it's less distant, you know, because you're very vulnerable when you're coming into somebody else's home and saying, will you try this? And you're giving them the chance of telling them it's shit. Right? And if they tell you it's shit, they're never going to see you again. So it's very easy to say it's shit, right? But people are good people. And usually for me, it's the second sip. It means that if there's a second sip, it means that the first one was liked. It's asking me if, can I make a cocktail with this? Can I try it on something? That shows some interest.
So, is this point 2 or point 3? I'm not following.
No, so those are the big differences.
Oh, okay, sorry.
With a big brand, you already don't need to do that because it's all been done before you. So you're coming in, and I would go into a bar, there'd be a red carpet, I go in, there's the drinks, I've never seen maybe a bill to pay. You know, so it's all very prepared. It can still be personal. You work hard to make it personal, right? And to lean over and to be interested in what people are doing. But when you're coming with your own brand, it's very vulnerable. And when you come with a small brand, having come from a big brand, you come with all these big ideas, and then you hit reality like a wall.
And what are the hardest realities you've had, or like, so let's say the hardest reality you've had to hit?
The reality is that. Products are more expensive when they're smaller companies, not because we're making higher profits, but because we don't have the economies of scale. So we buy a small amount of bottles, a small amount of product. We use better ingredients.
But to bring it back to bartending, right? So we spoke a lot about how when you were big, bartender 9 out of 10 and blah, blah, blah. Now that you're a smaller brand, how important is the bartender?
For me, amazingly important. It is my number one ally in this process. Most of the ones that I encounter, they like to fight this battle. They might not be able to, but they like it, you know? So, because at the end, it's at the essence of who you are, you know? Discovering new things, trying new things out, using new flavors, and telling people about it.
So would it be fair to say bartenders don't keep fighting the battle? Keep being the resistance?
I would say bartenders, get control of your bars again.
In Bartenders We Trust?
In Bartenders We Trust.
Thank you so much for coming.